Let us pray. Let us pray for an end to the waste and desecration of God's creation, for access to the fruits of creation to be shared equally among all people, and for communities and nations to find sustenance in the fruits of the earth and the water God has given us. Almighty God, you created the world and gave it into our care, so that in obedience to you, we might serve all people. Inspire us to use the riches of creation with wisdom and to ensure that their blessings are shared by all, that trusting in your bounty, all people may be empowered to seek freedom from poverty, famine, and oppression. Amen. So we welcome Anna to talk to us tonight. It's really, really good to see you, Anna. I know you've had a really busy week and we really appreciate that you're giving your time to us. So thank you. And I'll hand over to you now.
Great. Can you guys hear me all right and see me all right? Great. Cool. Okay, I have spotlighted myself, which was not quite what I wanted.
No, I did that.
Okay. Great. Okay, cool. I'll just kick off. So I think everyone here probably knows me. I'm Anna. I went to Wesleymem. I go to Wesleymem and have been doing so my whole life, but I did move to Zurich in 2019, which made that slightly less convenient. So now I live and work in Zurich and East Africa. A lot of my work takes me to East Africa. And my work is about, so I'm an engineer and a community engagement specialist, and I work on energy access projects across East Africa. And so my work is about sustainability, both in terms of the kind of clean energy, low carbon kind of side of things, but also aiming for long-term positive development outcomes. So I work as an engineer in international development. And I'm a little unconventional in that I have two jobs, which I do kind of side by side each other. And both of them take me to Tanzania. And they're different in some ways, but they're broadly under the same topic of international development and clean energy or renewable energy. So what I plan to do this evening is to tell you a little bit about those jobs and then hopefully leave some time at the end for questions. I think it's probably easier if questions are all at the end, though if you have any burning questions, then feel free to interrupt me. So I have some slides, which I shall now attempt to share my screen. Okay. Can you see this PowerPoint? Yeah, okay, now I'm going to make it big. Can you still see it?
Yeah. Yes.
So, my first job is that I work for a company called Smart Villages. We're a non-profit small R&D company. Just going to get rid of this. And the smart is because there's quite a lot of chat and talk around smart cities and how with the appropriate application of technology, we can make cities smart. And that means they can be sustainable for us to live in, but also good for us. So holistically good for us, like there can be healthcare in the right places, and there can be enough trees, and there can be green roofs and such like. And what we at Smart Villages say is that that's all very well, but what about the people that live in villages? And we believe that, as it says at the top, people in remote villages in the developing world, in the global south, should also be able to live in smart places in terms of having access to all of the services that they might need. And so we're a small company, and we do pilot projects across East Africa to try and demonstrate our Smart Villages approach and our Smart Villages aims. And what this means is we work across the Sustainable Development Goals, which you've probably heard of, these set of goals that we're aiming for kind of globally. So we're not just about one type of technology, we're not just energy, we're about how energy affects and impacts health, gender, a range of other kind of development indicators. We have a bottom-up approach in that we focus on community needs and priorities, and I'll show what that means in a moment. And for us, we have a lot of energy projects, or electricity projects rather, but it's about what that electricity allows you to do rather than actually just providing the electrons. And as I mentioned before, we're about this long-lasting kind of development impact. So I thought I would focus in on one of our projects, because I think it's a good example of what we do and what I do on a day-to-day basis. So we have a project in Tanzania about building community energy systems for Maasai people. The Maasai are quite a distinct tribe in Tanzania, also Kenya. They've got quite a distinct kind of way of life and their values. And our project is to try to build, design and build, along with these communities, 4 different mini-grid models. By mini-grid models, I mean small energy systems powered by solar PV that also have function in terms of function financially. That means that people pay to use them and eventually they make the money back. And this is something that's really important to us because we're trying to innovate on that difficult tension between reaching scale. We still have just under 1 billion people without electricity access, but acknowledge, and so we need to be able to replicate, but acknowledging that each village has a specific context and a specific way of working, specific governance systems made up by specific people, which mean that everything kind of has to be tailored to some extent. So I work on this kind of tension. So as an example, this is Kiuru sub-village. It's a sub-village because it's one of 7 villages of the main village, which is called Oibokishu. And here I am talking to a group of Maasai elders. And this is an example of how, in the work that I do and in work that we do across Smart Villages and in my other job, I have this real focus on trying to bring the community to the kind of, to the decision-making table, to the design decision-making table. A lot of how I try to work as an engineer is to, is what we kind of call participation or co-creation, trying to bring the end users, in this case, this set of community members, into as much of the design process as possible, acknowledging that there is a vast amount of knowledge and understanding on their side and also on our side. They are experts in their community and way of life, and I know some things about solar energy. So the aim is to treat those knowledges equally, and try to move towards kind of a more equal design partnership. And so this is how Smart Villages tries to do this. This is a big slide, and really I just show it to kind of communicate that it's messy, and it involves a lot of talking and a lot of activities in the villages. So the green things are activities that we do. And you'll see I've nicked this from my Smart Villages presentation because it's got their branding on. The green is what we do with communities. The red is what tends to be what I do or what we do, which is the kind of detailed engineering design or conceptual design. And so the green stuff kind of shows how often we go back into communities and we're talking to them, either bringing feedback from previous exercises or just going over new things, coming up with new ideas. So it's about understanding, over on the left here, I hope you can see my cursor, the needs and priorities, discussions on finance and governance. So who pays, how much, and who's in charge. Discussing potential system designs, discussions about placement, like physical, geographical placement. Where is this piece of technology going to sit in the community? And a really important bit for us is about this focus on what's called here productive use opportunities, which essentially means how can you guys make money out of this? Like, in what way is this helping you to set up a small business or get some income? So that was just to kind of illustrate our general approach. And this is an example of one of the exercises that we do. And actually I, along with Malcolm, came up with this and some colleagues in my PhD, and I continue to use this exercise in my work now. This is the village of Kiruru again. This is a group of youth this time, and they're making choices about, they've been asked the question, what services or what do you need to be able to do here in this in sub-village Kiruru in the next few years? Like, where do you see, what are your future kind of development priorities? And then to put some value judgments based on that, to get some quantitative data based on where people put their counters, and then to integrate that into our engineering design process. But I won't go into that now. We do a lot of community meetings. This is this is still Kiruru. We're sat under the community meeting tree with kind of representatives from all the different parts of the community. There's a row of women at the back there. This is the pastor. There's some elders here. And this guy, Elder Elias, he always tries to sit on our side. And this is my team here with our partner organization. Whenever we work in a country, we're always working alongside a partner organization. And here's another exercise which I think is, which has been really successful and we want to keep using, where we have tried to open up the conversation about where is this solar energy going to go, by making a teeny tiny model of the village and asking people to come and start putting it where it should be, and then moving the solar, which you can see is this little crumply bit here, to the different areas of the village. And this was a really useful exercise because it helped to open up that conversation in a really interactive way, rather than everyone kind of sitting in a circle, which you might be able to imagine happens quite a lot. People sit in a circle and nod politely. This gets people up and kind of saying, well, I guess the solar could go over here, but oh, actually we wanted to build that health dispensary there, so it can't go over here. What about over here? Well, actually that's the school's land and the headmaster won't be very happy with us. What about here? That's, you know, Joe Blogg's land and he uses it for his cows, so that won't work either. So it really gets these decisions and these conversations started in a very interactive way. And so this is a really key part of what I do and what I really enjoy doing. I mean, I like being an engineer, but I like being an engineer mostly because it gets me in a position to be able to make these sort of systems in this interactive way. This is still Kiruru, and as you can see on the left here, we got to the end of the technical side of things, because we, in April of this year, installed these solar panels. So that's 10 kilowatts of solar. You can see there's more space on the frame, so we can stick more in as they expand. And here, I think this was about 4 weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, I got back. We're having a conversation about payments, which can be a bit of a difficult conversation, but it's been part of the discussion for a long time. But here we were getting down to some detail on, you know, who pays, how much do they pay, how is it collected? Because as I said, sustainability, financial sustainability is super key if we're to reach scale with any of these kind of initiatives. And then it started raining, and this is why we were using the solar panels as a shelter. This slide shows exactly what one hopes to happen when electricity is installed in a village. It shows enterprise, it shows business, it shows a small salon that's been set up on the right-hand side, and a shop that's been set up on the left. And this photo was sent to us by our country partners last week. And so within about 3 weeks, a couple of people in Kiruru have really set things up. I mean, the building was already there, but, and this is also why we try to do so much work beforehand, talking about potential business ideas, talking about what one might need to set up a salon. Does one have the skills? Do you have the capital? Do you have the equipment? And is it going to make a decent business here? Are there enough people in sub-village Kiruru to make it pay? But this is exactly what one kind of wants to see when electricity is installed. And it comes back to this point of how we approach these energy projects, which is that it's not about the electrons, it's about what one does with them and what one and the possibilities of what one could do with them and catalyzing them. And so that brings me nicely to talk about a different project that I have with, that we have with Smart Villages, which is exactly about that. Once there's electricity in a community, how can we leverage that for better development outcomes in other development indicators? And in this case, I'm talking about health. So we have a really interesting project about healthcare, and well, it's called Innovative Access to Healthcare in Remote Communities. But essentially there's this challenge of there aren't many dispensaries or health clinics or hospitals out in the sticks, and particularly Maasai land, because they don't have many facilities. This is a problem because it takes time, effort and cost to reach a doctor. You can see that I've nicked this very, very lovely graphic that my colleague Natasha has made. And what this means is that people don't go to a clinic when there's a health problem. Maybe it's too much time, effort, or you just don't have, yeah, you might be time poor, but you also might be money poor, in which case you don't want to spend that money getting there on a motorbike. So people don't go, they might resort to different kind of traditional medicines, and this has severe impact on their health outcomes. And so what we've been doing is coming up with what we call a kind of a telehealth hub. So it's essentially a remote video conferencing doctor's service, which if you have electricity available in a village, you can install. You also obviously have to have a mobile data network, which is another challenge, but we've been experimenting with some satellite internet installation things. And so this photo shows a patient who is, there's a zoomed up one here, having a conversation with Dr. Tumaini, who is the doctor in the rural dispensary about 10 kilometers away at a kind of pop-up clinic that's happened in Olaswaki, which is a off-grid community. So the idea is the patient comes along at in a defined time window that they know when it's going to happen, and they can speak to the doctor. They have all their vitals taken, so they have their temperature and blood pressure and stuff taken. This is communicated to the doctor. Again, one needs internet, and then they chat to them. And if they need medicine, then a Buddha driver is sent, a motorbike driver is sent with the medicine at, say, the end of the clinic. But if they actually do need to see a doctor, then the doctor is able to say, okay, you actually do really need to come into me, or actually this is even more urgent, you need to go to a city hospital or whatever. They make that journey knowing that it was necessary. So we've run two, we've tested the technology, we've found a system that we think is robust and works, and we've run two day-long clinics at this rural village, and the next stage is for us to do some longer term trials to really build our evidence base. However, there are challenges. We want to carry out these 3 remote health trials over a few months to have it such that the village knows that each week at a certain time they can access this remote video conferencing service to see how that goes. But as I'm sure many of you know, the UK is cutting its overseas development assistance funding, and that's hitting us pretty hard. So we're currently trying to figure out how we can fund this situation. A lot of our Smart Villages funding for these projects, because we're R&D, comes from, or used to come from, the UK government. Cool, so that is, how am I doing for time? Not too bad. So that's Smart Villages, looking at these, where we have these projects which are quite defined, community focused, about a specific place, building a specific system or trialing a specific system. Now I'm going to talk about my other job, my second job, which I do alongside, which also takes place in East Africa. And that's a very kind of happy situation because when I go for one, I can work for the other. So I work as a link researcher for a research program called Modern Energy Cooking Services, MACS. It's on the bottom right here. I actually work for an organisation called GAMOS within that, but the research programme is called Modern Energy Cooking Services. And MEX is about accelerating the transition from cooking on biomass fuels. You can probably guess it's about cooking from all of these pictures. Cooking on biomass fuels, which is wood or charcoal, to what we call modern energy cooking fuels. And what we mean by that really is electricity or LPG if we have to. But we prefer electricity, particularly if it's clean electricity. And the reason this is important is that a lot of people say in Tanzania cook like this. So this is a traditional 3-stone firewood stove. So you can see the 3 stones, the pot is balanced on the stones and the wood is moved in. Another very common fuel is charcoal. Now the challenges associated with these fuels is that, well, one of the biggest ones, I guess, is on health. The WHO says that between 3 and 4 million people die prematurely due to diseases caused by indoor air pollution, which is caused by burning solid biomass. And obviously this is a very gendered thing because it's mostly the women and the children who are in those places doing the cooking. This is an outside kitchen, so that's ventilation-wise much better, but often it's inside. Yeah, so it's a gendered issue. It also, there are problems in terms of the local environment. So forests degraded due to charcoal production or wood. And in general, burning fossil fuels, even though it's a very small amount each time, there's a lot of people cooking, this still contributes to climate change and the increase of carbon into the atmosphere. So that's why we're interested. And the programme operates across 15 different countries. It operates out of the UK. It's, again, UK aid funded, and that is threatened, which is hugely problematic for us at the moment. It's a 5-year programme, and we're halfway through. So the threat is real for what we will be able to finish. Yeah, 15 countries, and my role is to work, as I said, in Tanzania to assist our in-country partner in Tanzania. So again, as with the work with Smart Villages, it's not about us going and telling Tanzanians, me as a white British person going and telling Tanzanians how they should cook. It's about catalyzing the innovation within the country to lead to change that is right for that country and for the people. So on the left, we have the Tanzania e-cookbook and Katerina on the front of it, and she is using an electric pressure cooker. So we have, the research program has been running, as I said, for 2.5 years. There was work before that as well. And what we have found is that the electric pressure cooker is wonderful because it's highly insulated. It uses very, very little energy in terms of electricity. And this makes it possible for countries even with weak grids. So with a national grid, which isn't very strong, for example, maybe there are voltage fluctuations, because it uses quite little electricity, it's not as much of a heavy load as, say, a hot plate, which we also use here, but our grid is pretty strong. So the electric pressure cooker has been our appliance of choice at the moment, and I wanted to show you a little bit about why as well. So I mentioned a couple of the challenges with the, say cooking with charcoal and solid biomass like wood, which are health, local environmental degradation and climate change contributions. But there's also an affordability issue here because particularly for families who are closer to or have a low income, a high proportion of their wages will go on cooking fuels, general fuels, lighting as well. So affordability is really important, and this piece of analysis shows that 500 grams of yellow beans cooked in Kenya as carefully as one can, with prices at the 2018 level, so it hasn't been updated, but still. Charcoal costs you this much, it's about 35. If you use this thing called a fireless cooker, which is essentially a giant insulating cushion, then it reduces a bit. Kerosene, LPG, that's gas, a hot plate, very wicked, lots of electricity, there's no insulation. But when you get to an EPC, the cost comes right down because it's such a highly insulated device that once you get to pressure, it doesn't really need much more electricity to keep it going. I have one of these in my kitchen. I did mean to put a photo of it in there with me using it, but I've forgotten. Apologies. The other great thing about an EPC is that once you have switched it on and turned the lid on and shut the steam release valve, you can walk away. And cooking is, again, well, as with the health benefit or the adverse health impact of cooking, cooking is very gendered. It's usually women and girls who are doing it, and it has a very high time burden. Particularly if you're cooking on charcoal and wood, you constantly have to kind of arrange the coals or like move the wood in to make sure you get even heat distribution. It's a very highly skilled thing to be able to do well, but it takes time. And the feedback that we've had is that with EPCs, you can switch it on and walk away, do something else. So it suddenly opens up this time for women who otherwise would be kept busy doing this. So that's very exciting. So what I do, I mentioned that we're working across 15 different countries. I work in Tanzania, and on the right here, you can see me and the Tartedo team. Tartedo are the organization that MEX, the program, funds to kind of be modern, to be MEX champions or e-cooking, electric cooking champions in Tanzania. They do a lot of advocacy work. They do a lot of awareness raising. At the bottom left, you can see them on TV in Tanzania talking about the EPC that they've got out on the desk here and explaining about why it's such a great device, and everyone in Tanzania who is connected to the grid for sure should purchase one. So I do a lot of work with Tartedo, supporting whatever they need. As I said, they do a lot of awareness raising, advocacy, but they're also very active in strengthening supply chains, getting quality electric pressure cookers into the country, having distribution networks, training technicians, having a manual such that if the EPC breaks, it can be put together by a local fundi, a local technician in wherever you are in Tanzania. This slide is a good illustration of kind of the before, or what we're trying to impact as a program and with Tartedo, and some of the innovation going on in Tanzania. So on the left, this is actually a school kitchen of a rural school that I work with the Smart Villages job, but everywhere there's crossover here. It's again a 3-stone stove, much bigger stones, much bigger pot, as you can see, because the school's got a lot of kids in. And on the right, Tartedo have got an electric pressure cooker, which holds 40 litres and is huge. And they're cooking a dish called ugali, which is sometimes also called posho. It's like a thick kind of porridge, maize flour porridge. And these two women, they need both of them to do this because it's such hard work. So this is to show the kind of what we're coming from and what we're kind of aiming for and some of the innovation that is going on in Tanzania. All of these EPCs at the moment, probably predictably, are made in China. Local manufacturers, not on the kind of very short-term horizon, but we're thinking about it for sure. Some other work that I've done with, just check the time again. Some other work that I've been involved with on the MEX side of things is a lot of user trials. Obviously, cooking, I mean, this electric pressure cooker is a fantastic piece of technology, but we all know that cooking isn't about technology. Cooking is highly cultural. It's very much about the tastes that one likes, practices, like the way that we're taught to cook is from our families usually or friends, and it's a highly human thing. There's lots of human factors to be aware of, and this is also why I love this job so much, because again, you have the technology and you have the human side, and they come together and they're so intertwined. You really cannot figure out one without paying due attention to the other. So we do a lot of user trials of these EPCs to teach people how to use them, but also to work with them to figure out how they can integrate them into their cuisine, into how they cook, how they, the sort of meals they cook, but also what time of day they cook. So I did a series of studies across some mini grids in Tanzania. So again, a mini grid is where you have the solar PV generation, in this case solar, which you can actually see on the roof here. This is the solar, and this is the box with the electrical equipment stuff in, charge controllers, etc. And it just takes the power out to kind of the local area. So this is also where the smart villages work and the MEX stuff really starts to come together. So we're doing these user trials of people who are living with mini grid connections, getting electricity from solar PV, paying quite a lot of money for it until the Tanzanian government said that no, that's not to happen anymore, and they have to pay the same as the national grid. Not that that was a good thing, because now none of the mini grid companies can make enough money. Anyway, teaching ladies how to use them and then working with them to figure out what works, what's good, what they need more support on. And this all helps us with the user engagement side of things, with figuring out how to maybe market these things more efficiently, what training materials are needed, etc. This is another such mini grid trial, which is on an island in Lake Victoria, on the border of Tanzania and Uganda. Again, you can see the mini grid infrastructure. You can see the solar poking back here. There's some on the roof, but there's some coming back there. That's probably about 30 kilowatts, I think. This is an island called Bezi. So back in 2020, just before Corona completely changed how everything works, we went out here and set up a trial working with some women, some cooks out here. This is a picture of just the circumstances of the island, which I thought might be interesting. So this is one of the main streets. It's pretty undeveloped as a place. They don't have any vehicles, so there's no need for big streets or anything like this. And this is a kitchen, actually, of a restaurant that we ate at several times. She's got multiple charcoal jikos, multiple charcoal stoves, and she cooks food all day on these. I mean, the good thing is it's outside, so the pollution will not be quite so bad. But yeah, it's heavy work. So we were working with this set of women here to understand how they cook right now, understand how they might be able to transfer some of that into an electric pressure cooker, and then actually monitor how they use the electric pressure cooker for a year. We did that study. It's only just finished. Even reading how much electricity, how much energy they use each time they cook a dish. Great. So yeah, that is the end of what I had arranged to say, what I put together. So there's a website about smart villages. There's a website about MEX, if anyone wants to know more, but I'm super happy to answer questions now. And I also have a website which has some of the community engagement exercise stuff that I do there too. Thank you.